Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, wants to stop the Palestinian Authority from funding the families of terrorists and any terrorists who survive their attacks and somehow get out of jail.
The ambassador held a special forum at the UN to try and end these payments once and for all. Our correspondent Shayna Estelin has more.
The boys were laughing, listening to music, talking to one another, and sleeping. Then the unimaginable happened.
Ruth Shortz's 18-year-old son was murdered in 2015 by a Palestinian terrorist who shot at the van he was in with the intent to kill.
Ezra was just a regular kid. He did not have any political motive being in Israel.
Ezra Shortz, a yeshiva student from Sharon, Massachusetts, was shot to death while visiting a West Bank settlement. The Palestinian man who killed him and 2 others is serving a life sentence in an Israeli prison. He and his family are receiving a sizable stipend from the Palestinian Authority for the rest of his life.
I don't think it's fair that he's dead, that he can't experience life, and the terrorist that killed him is sitting in jail, proud of himself, and supporting his family with this blood money.
Israel claims the PA pays out $300 million annually to families of dead terrorists and prisoners. Palestinians call it social welfare for martyrs' families and those in prison for alleged anti-Israeli activities. Israeli advocates say nearly 1/3 of the foreign aid the PA gets goes to the Martyrs Fund.
Why has the international community remained silent? What are we missing that somehow deems lives taken in Israel as unworthy of recognition?
Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, says it's incentive for future generations to attack Israelis, and that incentive comes straight from the top, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas.
Many terrorists, once caught, they admit that these salaries motivated them to kill. The more Israelis a Palestinian terrorist kills, the longer his sentence. The longer his sentence, the higher the payment.
There are some members of the U.S. Congress that are pushing a bill that would cut funding to the PA if they continue with these payments. But other U.S. officials are concerned that if funding is cut to the PA would collapse, and what would come next could even be worse for Israel. Michelle, David?
Shannon, never mind the political considerations for the PA. How do they justify the actual payments themselves?
Well, it's completely justified in their eyes. They're supporting the families of people they believe were killed to end the occupation or are being held as political prisoners unjustly by Israel. Of course, for Israel, they see it as families of suicide bombers or people that killed Israeli innocent civilians. Also remember that this is a very popular program for Palestinians, and if funding was to be cut for these programs, consider what it would do to Mahmoud Abbas, who already has a tenuous hold over the West Bank. David?
All right, Shayna Estelin reporting from the United Nations. Shayna, thank you.
For more, let's bring in Maher Masses. He is the Director of Public Policy at the Coalition of Palestinian American Organizations. And I'd also like to welcome Mudar Zahran. He is the Secretary General of the Jordanian Opposition Coalition. And Mudar, I want to start with you. What do you think about this call to stop financially rewarding terrorism?
First of all, those terrorists or those killers in jail, all of them, every single one of them are Jordanian Palestinians. All people in the West Bank, including Abbas himself, hold Jordanian passports. So you are talking about my countrymen, people we are responsible for, possibly much more than the Palestinian Authority is. That said, there's no question Abbas and the Palestinian Authority, they are corrupt. They are not interested in our people. They're not interested in our future, and definitely not interested in peace. They are financing blood for money in exchange of them staying more in power. The more they send terrorist killers, it's a good investment for them. The more Palestinians, young men, go and kill Israelis, the more that Abbas and his people become more relevant as the only game in town. Jordan's king is playing the same game. Radicalize your public, make them go kill Israelis and Americans and others, make them go crazy, and you will become the only game in town.
Maher Masses, your thoughts?
So what?
Just that, absolutely silly, what you're saying. Let me address the question. I mean, the question is, the so-called funding of the so-called terrorist families. We cannot assume that every single person in Israeli jails is a terrorist. There are women, there are children, and due process is something that does not exist in Israel. But why should we hold the families accountable for a person that's in the family that committed a crime? You know, Israel demolishes the homes of families, and where are these people supposed to live? The women, the children, the grandparents. You know, in 2015, when the Israeli terrorist, you know, firebombed a Palestinian home, did Israel demolish the home of that terrorist? Did Israel stop all welfare aid to that terrorist? And so, so we cannot blame the family members. They need to eat. They need to put shelter, to have shelter. They need to send the children to school. And so it's not, you know, funding terrorism. It's a humanitarian aid to these families.
But Maher, considering that martyrdom is praised, do you not think that paying for this incites and encourages violence?
No, actually, to the contrary. If these children have the means to go to school and to nurture these schools, to provide them with the necessary environment to teach them, and to basically help them, you know, not to become extremists.
But aren't the schools teaching them to become extremists? Aren't the schools also part of inciting this culture of violence and hatred, unfortunately?
Yeah, you know, it's really unfortunate that whenever we talk about the peace process, the Israeli propaganda machine keeps spewing out this nonsense to try to distract from the truth. And the truth is that the Israeli occupation has to come to an end. The Israeli, from the Palestinian point of view, the Israeli occupation force is a terrorist organization that is terrorizing millions of people. So if we're going to start pointing fingers, I can point to the fact that Israel is providing medical care to ISIS terrorists, and then arming them and sending them back to the battlefronts. Why is Israel providing medical aid to ISIS? Why did the former Israeli defense minister...
Mudar, do you share that? Do you share that assessment?
Well, okay. Sorry, for a moment I thought I was on Saturday Night Live, but no problem.
Mudar, I think you are ridiculous. You don't know what you're talking about.
Well, let's let Mudar have an opportunity to speak.
Don't do it the Palestinian Authority way. Don't do it the Palestinian Authority way. Listen, dude. Hey,
what's your way, Mudar? Do you have a way? What's your way, Mudar? You tell me.
Gentlemen, here's the rule. We all have to speak one at a time.
Explain to me.
Otherwise, Michelle and I are going to have to take over here.
The average Palestinian, how come you have to only kill an Israeli to get welfare from Abbas and Jordan's King and the rest of those gang? How about you start caring?
Mudar, you've asked him a question. Let's see if he can answer.
The welfare is provided to Palestinian poor people, not only when there's a person that commits an act.
Sir. You're talking to a Palestinian. Palestinians starve.
And what, you know, you're talking about Palestinians killing. Do you know that in the past 2 weeks, 3 Palestinian civilians were killed by Israelis, including a Jewish settler? Where's the outcry on that? Isn't that terrorism? There are thousands of Palestinian civilians that were killed by Israeli terrorists. And you consider yourself to be...
Maher, you've asked Mudar a question. Let's give him a chance to respond. Maher, you asked a question. Let's give Mudar a chance to respond.
In our blood, Abbas is sending our youngsters, while his children are vacationing in Paris and London, he's sending our youngsters to kill one Israeli and spend 15, 16 life sentences for a silly stipend that's worth nothing. Look at our people. We were absolutely the Jews of the Middle East. We are the most educated, smartest people in the Middle East. For us now, 11,000 of us are in jails. We need to accept this. We're not going to join any
what do you mean accept it? Why are they in jail? Why are they in jail?
And Abbas and his people are against us. They are terrorists. You know what? They've killed enough of us. Forget about the Israelis. They've killed enough Palestinians. Sir, you and many others are spending the quality time in Washington and London while people like me and my family are struggling. When I go to the West Bank and see the humiliation I get from the Palestinian Authority to my people, People were better off.
And you don't get the humiliation from the Israeli side? I don't suppose you get the humiliation from the Israeli side? I don't know what you're talking about, sir. I think you need to know fact and understand how many Palestinians were killed by the Israeli Defense Forces.
Stop lying to yourself, sir. Those people.
Oh my gosh, you're the one who's lying to yourself. You're delusional. Instead of standing with the Palestinian people, instead of standing with the Palestinian people, all you do is just criticizing and not providing any productive advice.
Yes, we have a solution, sir. Thank you for this comment. Honestly, now I agree with you. We need a productive solution. Abbas has to go. Jordan's king has to go. We have to rule ourselves through a really genuine peace with Israel. Israel does mistakes.
Oh, really?
Gentlemen, thank you for your perspectives. Clearly, this is not an issue we're going to resolve tonight.
You want Hamas to be the leader of the Palestinians?
Thank you very much. And Mudar Zahran, thank you both very much for your perspectives.
The same.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back.